My name is Anna, and what I went through left a permanent mark on my life. This story is about love, trust, betrayal, and the painful lessons I learned through it all. At one time, my life seemed like a perfect fairy tale, a story of building a dream together, achieving success, and sharing everything with those I loved. But reality turned out to be far more complex and cruel. The beginning of my dream was simple and, in many ways, magical. I met Michael during my senior year of college. He was that rare combination of ambition, intelligence, and charm, the kind of guy who made everyone in the room feel special. At first, we were just friends, sharing coffee breaks and study sessions, but before long, our friendship evolved into something deeper. I fell in love, and I felt like the luckiest person in the world. We dreamed together of a life, of a future, and even, one day, of starting a business. We both had big ideas, but what we wanted most was to build something meaningful together, something we could look back on and be proud of. Shortly after graduation, we got married. Our wedding was a small, intimate affair with only close friends and family, but that day remains one of my happiest memories. Everything felt right. With Michael by my side, I believed we could face anything. The very next year, we launched our company. We had no investors, no capital, just the little money we'd saved up and a shared dream. Those early days were challenging. We had to take on extra jobs just to pay the bills, working countless late nights and early mornings. There were times I wasn't sure we'd make it, but Michael was always there, lifting me up, encouraging me to keep going. He had a way of calming my doubts, making me believe in the impossible. Over the years, as our company grew, so did our bond. Every success felt like ours, every failure just another reason to try harder. Michael wasn't just my partner in business. He was my best friend, my confidant, my everything. Looking back, I realize how naively I trusted that things would always stay this way, that we'd forever be the unbreakable team we'd become. As our business began to stabilize, I felt it was time to think about expansion. We wanted someone who could help us take the company to new heights, but finding the right person was harder than we expected. That's when I thought of Laura. Laura and I had known each other since childhood. She was the sister I never had, my confidant, and my rock through so many difficult times. Even after life took us in different directions, we stayed close, sharing our ups and downs. Laura had always been supportive of my relationship with Michael, celebrating our milestones as if they were her own. So, naturally, I invited her to join us as a partner in our growing company. Laura brought new energy and ideas into the business, and at first, everything felt perfect. She and Michael hit it off right away. I was thrilled. They were both passionate about the work, and we finally had the team I'd always dreamed of. We worked long hours together, laughed over shared successes, and cheered each other on during tough days. For a while, everything seemed flawless. I was happy. I was proud. I thought I had it all: a thriving business, a loving husband, and a best friend by my side. But as time went on, subtle changes began to creep in. Michael and Laura started spending more and more time together. They had lunch together almost every day, often worked late, and frequently made decisions without me. At first, I shrugged it off, telling myself it was just the demands of a growing business. But the longer this went on, the more I felt a gnawing unease. My role in our perfect team began to feel secondary, as if I were merely an outsider watching them drive the company forward. Then there were the private conversations, hushed voices in the hallways, closed-door meetings that used to include me but no longer did. I'd catch them sharing looks that I couldn't quite read, brief glances that left me feeling both excluded and foolish for even noticing. I was too afraid to confront them, too scared of seeming paranoid or insecure. But my heart told me something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe it. One evening, when I could no longer bear the doubts gnawing at me, I stayed late at the office, hoping to catch a moment to talk to Michael alone. Instead, I found him and Laura together, laughing quietly over something I couldn't hear. They looked so at ease, so close, and a pang of jealousy hit me that I couldn't ignore. I quietly left the office, feeling more alone than I ever had. I spent that night tossing and turning, trying to shake off the image of them together, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to focus on work, to bury my fears. But the distance between Michael and me grew. I missed the way we used to talk, the way he used to look at me, the way he'd make me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. Now, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, watching as my husband and my best friend grew closer and closer. I decided to confront Michael, hoping for reassurance. I suggested we take a vacation, just the two of us, to reconnect. But he brushed me off, saying it wasn't a good time, that the business needed our focus. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach, but I pushed it down, telling myself that he was just stressed, that things would go back to normal soon. But things didn't go back to normal. The distance between us grew, and Laura, once my closest friend, started to seem almost like a stranger. She avoided me more and more, claiming she was too busy whenever I suggested we spend time together. It hurt, but I tried to convince myself that maybe it was just the demands of our growing business, that things would settle down in time. Then, one night, I decided to go through our company's financial reports. It was just supposed to be routine, but I found several large, unexplained transactions. These weren't the kind of expenses we usually approved, and there were vague descriptions attached to them that didn't make sense. I thought about calling Laura to ask her what was going on, but something held me back. For the first time, I felt the sting of mistrust toward her, the woman who had always been my confidant. I decided to bring it up with Michael, but when I asked him about the transactions, he dismissed my concerns. "It's nothing," he said, with a tone that was strangely cold, distant. He assured me it was all under control, that I was just stressed and overthinking things. But the way he looked at me, the way he shrugged off my concerns, it didn't sit right with me. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him as I always had, but a part of me couldn't ignore the doubt creeping into my heart. Then came the anonymous email. It arrived in my inbox one morning, with no sender and no subject line. The message was short, but it made my blood run cold. It claimed that Michael and Laura were having an affair, that they were planning to push me out of the business and take everything for themselves. At first, I refused to believe it. I closed my laptop, telling myself that it was just some cruel prank. But as I sat there, alone in my office, the words echoed in my mind, stirring up every doubt and fear I'd been trying to bury. I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to find out the truth. That's when I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad movie, but I was desperate for answers. The investigator began following Michael and Laura, documenting their movements, their meetings. Days turned into weeks, and each day, my anxiety grew. I barely slept, barely ate, consumed by a gnawing sense of dread. The day the investigator gave me his report, I felt like I was about to be sick. The report was detailed, with photos, timestamps, receipts. It was all there, proof of their affair, proof that they'd been siphoning money from the company, setting up a new business behind my back. My worst fears had come true. My heart shattered as I read through the report. Every word, every picture, every detail felt like a knife twisting deeper and deeper. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted with everything, my dreams, my future, my life, had betrayed me. And Laura, my best friend, my sister in every way that mattered, had been right there beside him. They had plotted together, laughed together, stolen from me together. I felt like my entire world was crumbling. But more than anything, I felt a burning rage. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. They had taken everything from me, and they had done it while smiling to my face, pretending that we were still partners, still friends. In that moment, I knew that I couldn't let them get away with it. I couldn't let them destroy everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in. I spent the next few days quietly preparing. I collected every piece of evidence, every transaction record, every photograph. I compiled a complete dossier of their betrayal, a meticulously documented story of every lie, every theft, every instance of manipulation. And then I waited. I waited for the right moment to confront them, to expose them for what they really were. Finally, the day came. It was a high-stakes meeting with our biggest investors, the kind of meeting that could make or break the company's future. Michael and Laura were both there, confident, smiling, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. As the meeting began, I calmly took my seat at the head of the table, my heart pounding but my expression steady. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and opened the folder in front of me. I began to lay out the evidence, piece by piece, watching as the smug expressions on their faces turned to shock, then horror. I detailed every lie, every stolen dollar, every hidden meeting. The room fell silent as the reality of what they had done became clear to everyone present. Investors, partners, colleagues, they all saw Michael and Laura for who they truly were. By the time I was finished, they looked like strangers, stripped of every mask, every facade. They tried to deny it, tried to make excuses, but the evidence was undeniable. There was nowhere left for them to hide. The silence in the room was deafening. Every person around that table had trusted Michael and Laura, respected them, admired them, and now they were witnessing their complete and utter downfall. Michael's face had turned pale, his usual confident demeanor shattered. Laura sat frozen, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth opening and closing as if she were trying to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, they looked small, weak, exposed. I could feel a strange sense of satisfaction watching them squirm, feeling the weight of their own betrayal come crashing down on them. But alongside that satisfaction, there was a hollow emptiness. This wasn't how I had wanted things to turn out. These were people I had once loved, people I had shared my life with. And now they were strangers, strangers who had tried to destroy everything I held dear. As the meeting wrapped up, one of our major investors, someone who had been with us since the early days, stood up and announced that he was pulling his funding. One by one, others followed suit. The trust that Michael and Laura had once held in the business world was gone, destroyed in an instant. I watched as they desperately tried to salvage the situation, but it was too late. They had burned every bridge, and now they were left with nothing. After everyone else had left the room, I stood up, gathering my papers, feeling a strange sense of finality. Michael and Laura remained seated, their faces filled with disbelief, anger, and something that almost looked like fear. For a moment, I hesitated, feeling a flicker of the old memories, the love and friendship that had once bound us together. But then I reminded myself of everything they had done, the lies, the betrayal. I looked at Michael, my voice steady but cold. "I loved you. I trusted you. And you threw it all away," I said. Then, turning to Laura, I simply added, "You were like a sister to me." She opened her mouth as if to respond, but I held up a hand, silencing her. "It's over," I said, my voice final. With that, I walked out of the room, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions alone. As I left the building, I felt a wave of mixed emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and, above all, an overwhelming emptiness. Yes, I had one. I had exposed them, taken back control of my company, my life. But I had also lost two of the people who had once meant the world to me. Leaving the building that day felt surreal. I had walked out victorious, but I was carrying the weight of a hollow victory. I had my company back, my life back, but at a cost I could barely comprehend. The people who had once been my entire world were now my enemies, and the betrayal I had uncovered left scars that ran deep. The days that followed were quiet, almost unnervingly so. Word of Michael and Laura's actions spread quickly, and with each passing day, their reputations continued to crumble. Colleagues and former friends distanced themselves, clients left, and eventually, Michael and Laura's new business collapsed before it had even fully begun. Their betrayal had caught up with them, and the world they had tried to build on lies was now in ruins. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. I had trusted them, relied on them, shared everything with them, and now they were nothing more than ghosts of my past. I threw myself into work, trying to rebuild what they had tried to tear down. Every day was a new battle to restore faith in the company, to prove to clients and investors that we could still be trusted. It was exhausting, draining, but I kept going. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to let their betrayal define my future. Slowly, the company began to stabilize. Old clients returned, new projects came in, and I started to feel a sense of accomplishment. I was proud of what I had achieved, proud of the strength I had found within myself. But even as things improved, the emptiness remained. At night, I'd often lie awake, haunted by memories of the life I had once believed was mine. I'd think about the long hours Michael and I had spent building our dreams, the laughter and late-night talks with Laura, the plans we'd made for a future that now felt like a distant illusion. I missed them, or at least, I missed the versions of them I thought I knew, the people they had pretended to be. One evening, months after the fallout, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Laura. My hands shook as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with only a few words written on it. "I'm sorry for everything." That was all. No explanation, no plea for forgiveness, just a simple apology. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling a swirl of emotions. Anger, sadness, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of closure. I knew that an apology wouldn't undo the damage they had caused, but in some strange way, it helped to finally hear, even if it was just a few words on a page. I folded the letter and tucked it away, not quite ready to let go, but feeling just a little bit lighter. Life continued on. The company continued to grow, and I began to find joy in my work again. But I was different. I was cautious, guarded, no longer the trusting, optimistic person I had once been. Betrayal has a way of changing you, of hardening your heart. And while I had come to accept this new version of myself, there were times I wished things had turned out differently. Looking back, I know I made the right choice. I stood up for myself, for my dreams, and for everything I had worked so hard to achieve. But in the end, I lost pieces of myself that I would never get back. As time went by, I found a new sense of peace, even if it was tinged with the bitterness of what I had lost. I had faced the worst kind of betrayal and come out on the other side, stronger, wiser, and, in some ways, harder. I had learned that the world doesn't always play fair, that the people you trust the most can hurt you in ways you never thought possible. But I had also learned something about resilience, about my own ability to stand up and keep going, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. I began to build new relationships, carefully, slowly. Trust was no longer something I gave freely. It had become something precious, something that had to be earned. Some people understood, others didn't, but I no longer worried about what anyone thought. I was focused on my own path, my own goals, and on creating a life that was finally fully mine. My company grew, and I hired people who were passionate, loyal, and dedicated. With each new success, I felt a little more of the weight lift, felt a little more whole. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd think back to Michael and Laura, wonder where they were, what they were doing. I heard whispers now and then, rumors that they had tried to start fresh in a new city, a new company. But no matter where they went, the stain of their actions seemed to follow them. They had lost the trust of everyone who had once believed in them, and in the world of business, trust is everything. One day, out of the blue, I received a message from Michael. I almost deleted it without reading it, but something made me pause. His words were remorseful, filled with regret. He wrote that he had made the biggest mistake of his life, that he had lost everything, that he wished he could turn back time. He asked if I could ever forgive him, not for what he had done, but so that he could find peace within himself. I read his message over and over, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to let go of the pain and move forward without any lingering bitterness. But another part of me couldn't forget the hurt, the betrayal, the way he and Laura had torn apart everything we had built together. In the end, I replied with a simple message: I hope you find what you're looking for. Forgiving them wasn't something I could do for them, but it was something I could do for myself. Over time, I let go of the anger, the resentment. I realized that holding on to those feelings only weighed me down. I had a life to live, a future to build, and I couldn't keep looking back. So, slowly, I began to release the past. Years later, I found myself telling this story to a friend, someone who was going through their own difficult time. As I spoke, I realized that the pain no longer held power over me. It was simply a chapter of my life, one that had taught me more than I could have ever imagined. I had been betrayed, yes, but I had also discovered a strength within myself that I never knew existed. In the end, I came to see that life is a journey, full of both beautiful and painful moments. And while I may never fully understand why Michael and Laura did what they did, I had found peace in knowing that I had risen above it. I had reclaimed my life, my happiness, and my future. And so, with that, I close this chapter. I've moved on, found new dreams, and built a life that is stronger and more resilient than ever.